So this is the beginning of the first of our substantive piece of work, and where I tend to begin with clients, having set up the base knowledge of information, which is what the pinches and crunches, how did you meet, and the relationship images was all about. We're now moving into what I tend to begin with as the substantial first piece of work, which is communication. Communication is a significant, important first step really in the rebuilding of damage in the relationship, in that you need to be able to transact, communicate, discuss in order to progress and change, journey into whatever decision the two of you are wanting to take. In other words, you've got to be able to do effective communication to be able to move forward with the choices that the two of you are going to take about your futures. And so in your workbook are what I call ambiguous pictures. I'd like you, please, to cover over most of them, except the first one. So cover over all of the images that you have, ambiguous pictures, and just look at the very first one. And what I'm asking is for each of you separately, hopefully you've got your own separate workbooks with the separate images, look at the first image. What do you see in that picture, in that image? Discuss very briefly with the other person. What do you see? Go on to the second one. Don't spend too long. What do you see in the second one? And there's quite a number that I have given to you. What are you first seeing in those pictorial images? Discuss. Spend some time discussing all of them. Having done that, and at this point you might want to have paused the video, when you come back to the video, you'll learn this point. There's a number of possible scenarios going on in those images. In which of those images did you see something different to what the other person was seeing? It's really good to have a discussion about what you saw and what they didn't see, and reflect on how the two of you approached the viewing of the different images. For example, when one saw an image and the other couldn't, did you help the other person to try to see it? It's really interesting, the dynamics. When in conflict, so often we take up our own stance and we often don't help the other person to see the other image. But as you were doing this exercise, I think the majority of couples will actually have tried to help the other to see the perspective that they are seeing, to see what the other person couldn't see, and to point it out, to help them to better see, to better understand. Even in deep conflict, we want to try to help the other person to see what we can't see. The point of that exercise is something to do with different perspectives. that each of us will have when we see something. When you're having conversations, when you're discussing something, each of you may be carrying very different pieces of information, and we want to convince the other person of rightness on our side. We can become really dogmatic, really fixed and firm in our view that our perspective is the right perspective, and sometimes we lose flexibility because we can't see another perspective. My way is the right way. And what this exercise does is to say, shake it up a bit, loosen it up a bit, become a bit more flexible, not quite so dogmatic. There are times when the other person is carrying a different perspective to what we are carrying, and it is not always about right or wrong. Sometimes it's about difference. Sometimes it's about difference and not right or wrong. So often our conflict gets so out of hand, and yet some while later we don't even remember what the issue was about. It's not about the top of the toothpaste. It's not about the toilet seat. It's often because there's a point we want to make. Sometimes it's about a point we want to score because our core emotional needs are not being met. At an unconscious level, we don't realize it. And the other person can become the enemy because we've gone into fight, flight, freeze. Hope you find something useful from that exercise. But the point is, and the lesson I want you to take away is, sometimes we've got to become more flexible and realize that the other person may be carrying a perspective that we are not carrying. We've got to be less dogmatic. Send me a message. It's time to get your relationship back onto a better footing for your future. Let's do some work without shame and bring colour back to life. Send the email, send the message to me, Gary McFarlane, at the Kairos Centre, and let's begin to reclaim your quality of life.